Good morning. I would like to begin our lesson today. It is psychology. What we're going to focus on today is memory. Our objective is to examine theory of how memory and forgetting do occur. And our state standard is to evaluate biological processes and disorders associated with memory. So, how do we make memories? Well, let's start. Here's a flowchart. We start with environmental input, sensory input gets into our sensory memory. At that point, we decide, are we going to remember it, or are we going to forget it? If we're going to remember it, we start to concentrate on it. We think about it. That will go into our short-term memory. If we rehearse and maintenance our short-term memory, we can actually move those memories into long-term. Once in long-term, it's there until the end of time, unless something happens to make us forget. So, that was a real quick view of our flow chart. Let's go ahead and start at the beginning and see that something happens. When something happens, it means we are getting an environmental stimuli by hearing, sight, smell, taste, or touch. When we receive something from one of our 5 senses, it's called a sensory memory. Those are our initial input into our memory bank. Here's a few sensory facts. Stimuli that happens is either instantly ignored or perceived. If it's perceived, it is a sensory memory. Sensory memory is the shortest memory. It decays almost as soon as we perceive it, typically within about a millisecond after it's perceived. The sensory memory is also broken down into visual stimuli, which is our iconic memory, auditory stimuli, which is our iconic memory, or our touch stimuli, which is hepatic memory. Another cool fact is for our sense of smell, because the nose, the olfactory bulb, and the olfactory cortex, that's where smells are processed, is so close to the hippocampus and the amygdala where memories are processed that they feel that smells are more strongly and quickly associated with memories and that they can last longer. So let's go back to our flowchart. We've got an environmental input. It's gone into our sensory memory. We've decided not to forget it, so we're concentrating on it. Then it becomes a short-term memory. Short-term memory facts is the ability to remember past sensory experiences, impressions, and learned ideas. Information is generally for 15 to 30 seconds or less, but usually never more than 1 minute. Short-term memory is also thought to only be able to hold about 7 items plus or minus 2. An example of that is a phone number. Say your phone number is 501-555-5555. Now, I give you that because that's a fake number, but that is how many? That's 9 digits. So that's about the max that you can give someone and they can sit there and remember it short term without having to rehearse by repeating it over and over. If you give someone a 1-800 number, it's almost impossible to remember it by just saying it over and over again. So that's kind of an idea of where your short-term memory only holds about 7 plus or minus facts. Let's see, also by replaying the information or associating the information, it can become a long-term memory. So say that someone gives you a 501 area code phone number. Well, you're from Arkansas, so 501, that means they're from Arkansas. So you no longer really have to repeat that over and over again because you're able to recall information from your long-term memory. So you just have to work on the 6 digits, saying them over and over again. All right, let's go back to our flow chart. We're now moving through our short term to our maintenance. That's the rehearsing of things over and over and over again. 501, 555. We'll just do some different numbers. 5152. 555, 5152. You're repeating it over and over again, trying to encode it into your long-term memory. Once we get it into our long-term memory, by repeating it over and over, it's there. So some long-term memory facts is it is the final stage of memory processing. It decays very little with time and is easier to recall. Once again, like phone numbers. If I give you a 501, you don't have to remember that. You're from Arkansas. You can just click that out of your long-term memory and say, I've got the 501 part. I just got to focus on the other numbers. Or if someone says, oh, I'm from, say, Sherwood, well, then you know they're probably going to be a 501-835 because your long-term memory can recall that from previous information that's been stored. The capacity for storage of long-term memory is unlimited. We do not know how much information the brain can actually retain. Has two types of processing, shallow and deep. That's kind of pretty self-explanatory. Shallow is just on the surface of the long-term memory. There aren't a lot of details. It focuses on physical features rather than the meaning. Deep, it's much deeper encoded into your memory. It lasts longer, and the recall of the information is better, and the information involves associations and meanings. So, example, a penny. You know what a penny looks like on the back? No. But you can recall more in depth. It's round and it's copper, and there is a president on the front and there's a monument on the back. I don't really remember which, but the meaning behind it, things that are more of a meaning rather than an exact detail. Also long-term can be further divided into explicit memory. This is information that we can evoke consciously, facts, information, data, general knowledge, and implicit memory, motor skills. So an idea of implicit memory would be driving a car. You don't have to sit there and go, my hand's going to rock back and forth, I'm going to look both ways. It just becomes a motor skill that you can do without actually having to go through the steps. Whereas explicit it's more data, general knowledge, how to do a math problem. Then explicit is further divided into semantic memories or episodic memories. Semantic memory is general information such as facts and meanings, and episodic memory is memories and past experiences. So episodic is something that has to do with you. And semantic is something that's just something you know. You've heard, you've been told. An example is if you say you go to Disney World and something happens there. You get to hug Mickey Mouse or you're proposed to. That's a memory or experience for you. However, a semantic memory would be, say a friend of yours goes to Disney and they're proposed to at Disney. That's information you got from them. It's not your memory. Whereas episodic would be, oh, that happened to me. So, a little visual breakdown is variety of long-term memories. There's also explicit or declarative memory, and then implicit non-declarative memory. So explicit memory is memory with conscious recall, and implicit is memory without conscious recall. Divide those down. Explicit, semantic, and episodic. We've gone over that. And then there's implicit, which is procedural, classically conditioned memories or priming. A procedural is, once again, a motor skill, driving a car, brushing your teeth, riding a bike. Classically conditioned memories are responses to stimuli, phobias. You see a snake, it's something that you don't have to think of. It just happens. And then priming is early exposure, like heightened fears after reading a novel or a scary movie. All right. Want to know how to help things get into our long-term memory? How about a mnemonic? A mnemonic is a technique that is used to help us retain and recall information using creative forms such as poems, phrases, acronyms, or visual cues. I have the little hands because some people will say January, February, March, April, May. The top knuckle of your hand is actually a 31 for the month. And if it's a dip down, it's a 30, except for February, which is 28. So some people remember things like that. Also, if you've ever seen someone do this, if you say right or left, your left hand makes an L. Some other common mnemonics are in music. People can learn the actual musical notes by little sayings. If it's on the bar, it would be like every good boy does fine for the note E, G, B, D, F. Or the spaces on the bar would be face, just F-A-C-E. Most everyone's heard of Roy G. Biv for a rainbow. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. We also have how do you know your planets? My very educated mother just served us nachos for Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Well, I was also in the medical field for a while, and we had to learn cranial nerves. Now, the cranial nerve mnemonic that I found was, on occasion, trusty truck acts funny, very good vehicle anyhow. I never saw that one in college, but we learned it. A mnemonic has to be personal, something that's easy for you to remember. I would never remember that, but I did remember, once one takes the anatomy final, very good vacations are happening. So for me, that was something easy to use. So if you make a mnemonic something that's easy or rhythmic, something that's easy for you to remember, it will help you rehearse that information into your long-term memory and be able to recall it. I hope you had a great time hearing about psychology in our memory, and we'll see you again next class. Bye, guys.